Ink-a-dink, 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 ink-a-dink. Wow! Mankato, Minnesota. Katmandu, Nepal. Mankato, Minnesota. Katmandu, Nepal. Oh, we're discussing, welcome to Basil BuddhaCat Presents, we're discussing the finest place on the planet Earth, and we're having a disagreement. And it all really boils down to which comes first, the man or the cat, or the cat or the man, Basil reminds me. And I'm saying, hold on a second. You talk to him, Basil, while I'm, Okay. Okay, where were we? Oh. Mankato, Minnesota. Katmandu, Nepal. Well, it's just going to have to go to be one of those unresolved issues, unresolved discussions. But what Basil really wanted to talk about today is he wants to talk about a couple of things. One, says he wants to talk about what people and cats have in common. And we discussed cats living in squalor on other shows. You've seen, heard tales and seen stories about cats eating food from a garbage can. Sometimes in the winter, finding shelter from the cold under the hood of a car. Just living in living essentially in squalor, and Basil wanted to talk about that under the context of want to talk about that under the context of affluence and poverty. But actually, first, just to get it off to a really sad start, we're gonna play our old favorites. We're gonna play. Well, let's start off with Snarky. Snarky is actually our cameraman. Snarky has actually told us he's gonna not do our camera work anymore unless we play his favorite, because we've been playing Sad Cat Diaries on occasion, and without playing Sad Dog Diaries. So for you, Snarky, we're going to start off with Sad Dog Diaries. See you in a minute.
It has occurred to me today that my dearest human has never sniffed my backside. I must bond with him in different ways. Like my father always used to say, if you want someone to look you in the eye, make sure that your mouth smells exactly like your butt. It's difficult to argue with that logic. And so I have eaten some rotting earthworms in preparation for my dear human's return. as well as one of his socks. Dear Diary, it's not so much that I miss my testicles. I know it's a rite of passage in our pack, and I'm sure that my dearest human has had his removed as well. But when that one bulldog comes to the dog park and parades his testicles around, I can't help but notice how Ginger looks at them. I love Ginger. To be fair, I will admit, he has a fine-smelling butthole. Dear Diary, the cat is a curious, magical creature. It's as if a teddy bear mated with a cactus, and it's much less fun to play with than it would appear. And yet it poops delicious candy into a box of pea-flavored sprinkles. Dearest human guards these treats jealously, often harvesting them into a barrel. But I will admit that I sneak one from time to time. They are delicious. Forgive me. Dear Diary, this is the 733rd day that I have tried to test what Cat swore to me was true. Namely, that if you hump anything long enough, you will find a vagina. So far, the results have been mixed. My dearest human's leg vagina has not revealed itself. However, I'm almost certain that I felt something on the brown teddy bear. More tests are needed. Dear Diary, I have yet to see my dearest human poop anywhere. I suspect he may not know how. I have resolved to try and teach him when we patrol the neighborhood each day in search of men with hats and beards. It is embarrassing to do in public, but he must learn somehow. I fear he will die of constipation if I don't succeed. Fortunately, my dearest human seems to show some interest and is now collecting my feces in a small bag. Soon. Dear Diary, I must be more careful when licking my genitals. My dearest human seems sensitive about it, most likely because he's incapable of licking his own. As always, I am in awe of his ability to be so noble, despite what I can only imagine are filthy, filthy genitals. He hides them every day. Dear Diary, today I have added a fourth circle to my pre-pooping ritual. As before, the first circle is to verify that I do in fact need to poop. The second is to check for gremlins and men with beards and hats. The third is to re-verify my need for pooping, and now the fourth is to honor my newly deceased toy. Stuffed llama, rest in peace. I didn't mean to shake your head off. Dear Diary, I told the cat about how my dearest human has promoted me, teaching me to shake so I can participate in his business dealings. However, Cat pointed out that I'm often unaware of what I'm shaking on. For example, when I shook the neighbor's hand this morning, I have no clue what I agreed to. None. Cat says this is how the devil buys souls. I will pee on the bed for comfort. Dear Diary, my dearest human asked me where the ball was when it was clearly in plain sight. I brought it over, and he threw it even farther away, then asked me where it was, and was very happy when I brought it again. Perhaps a metaphor? Dearest human leaves each day, and I am happy when he returns. Wait, maybe he is the ball, and I am dearest human. This is too much. I must be on the bed.
Okay, well, are you happy? He didn't say anything because actually there was nothing in it, nothing appropriate for him to say under the circumstances. You know, dogs have two sounds in their vocabulary, two utterances. One being ruff, and the other one being grrr. And those two sounds, snark. Oh, okay, he'll let us get by with this one more time. He'll let us remind him one more time because he wasn't able to communicate any other types of responses to us when we played Sad Dog Diary. But what dogs have the two sounds, the ruff and grrr, and those two sounds, when combined, only convey four ideas, depending on how you combine them and enunciate them, if you will. One being, feed me, scratch my belly, as Snorky lays on his back, take me for a walk, and whoops, I piddled on your carpet. Well, true or not, Snarky? True or not? Okay. Well, Basil wants us to take the spotlight off of Snarky for a minute and put it on us again. Okay, or at least on him. Okay, we've talked about cats living in squalor. We've talked about them feeding in garbage cans, finding shelter from cold weather under the hood of a car, which sometimes, sadly enough, leads to grisly results. Living wild, living feral, living off of, in most cases, the non-fat of the land. Unless they're in the countryside, they have a little bit more available to them. But and sometimes cats fall into this category after they've been taken care of for a period of time by people and unfortunately declawed. And Basil wants me to remind you kids out there, and he'll say it first so you cats can know exactly what he's talking about. Okay, that's it. Meow. Said, do not declaw your cats. Reason being, if they do get loose or are out in the wild, they need to have protection. They need to have a way to escape from danger, climbing a tree, and they need to have, if cornered, they need to have the claws to help defend themselves. And sometimes, not necessarily involving dogs, as Snarky flapped his ears. I guess that's what he meant. But other animals can be dangerous to cats. A lot of things can be dangerous to cats out in the wild. I mean, they're not the largest animals out there. They're not the smallest. They're not the largest. They can be both predator and prey if left out in the big wide world out there. But Basil's point is this notion of affluence and poverty, and how cats and people, or people and cats, in Mankato, Minnesota. I guess in Nepal it's cats and people. They have a lot in common, including often being in an impoverished situation. Okay, Basil wants to add something to that. Okay, go ahead, and I'll quote him, of course, first. Okay, Basil says that people have what's become a growing discrepancy, a growing divide between the uber wealthy and the undernourished, impoverished portion of, not just worldwide, but in this country too, in America, but certainly more worldwide. But it's become an issue to be talked about and dealt with here too. Basil says there's many kids in America, and of course Basil has more of an affinity for kids than he does for adults, as you would expect, except when they pull his tail and pull his ears and get rough with him. But anyway, it says there's many kids in America that are growing up living in cars. Car is their principal residence, and that's tough. That's tough. I guess you can, for a little bit of gasoline, you can warm up a car by turning the heat on in the car and keep it warm for a fair amount of the evening, a fair amount of overnight, and then you can avail yourself of places, bathrooms in in service stations, etc., that a child can get dressed in the morning, or at least cleaned up a little bit before going off to school, and parents certainly try to keep their kids in school even through those rough times. But it's difficult for kids because if they're not dressed nicely, they could become the butt of other kids' jokes. They can be picked on. Kids can be cruel at times. Basil says I'm going on a little too far, but he does want me. What? Yep. No, that wasn't me. Basil, will you stop that? We did that the last show. We did that where I was last show I was miming a cat, clawing and stretching and do the other things, and Basil, the scamp that he is, decided he'd mimic me in a way that you couldn't tell it wasn't me. But okay, enough. We'll have to call a truce on that bit of fun and games, Basil. So anyway, so Basil wants you to think about helping kids out, and not just through private or religious organizations, because their resources are limited, because they don't have the wide range of ability to take care of a lot of people, because there are so many, literally hundreds of thousands, perhaps more kids, and certainly a lot of adults too, growing up and living in poverty. Hold on a second, this is important. Morning, this is David. Hey, how you doing, Mary? No, they have to come home. They have a pet in the house, and they have to come home. So I need to have, usually at best a day's notice. Oh shoot! Hold on, I'm in a bad spot. I'm losing you. Hold on. I'll try to keep you on the line. That always works. So where were we? Okay. So Basil wanted to point that out, that it's certainly not just cats, not just dogs, as Snarky would point out, but people too need to have a helping hand, and Basil understands the power of social services, government, etc. Government to help out, and with the additional power the government has over small agencies and individuals and religions and churches and things, has the power to do good on a wider basis. And it's bureaucratic, granted, but our government can do so much more than a small group can. So at any rate, that's one of the things he wanted to talk about. Okay, well it's the large phone, and it sounds like. Hello, Basil BuddhaCat presents. Good morning. It is Elsie, Basil. Like, you know, this is, but Elsie's gained in prominence. She normally ends up checking in on the smaller phone, but this time she's been elevated in stature to the larger phone. Okay, Elsie has a friend with her. She knew that we wouldn't give the friend status, the status that we give Elsie, but we're gonna, okay, we'll do this from now, Elsie. And Elsie's gonna have to translate, because Elsie in the hereafters become good friends with the dog in particular, and she says that we're gonna know who this dog is, mainly through the owner of the dog. Okay, because we've heard of the owner. The owner was actually, she says, a candidate for president of the United States. Okay, that kind of narrows it down. Well, it doesn't really, but it helps a little bit. Could you just tell us, Elsie, who that dog is? She says it's actually the dog that belonged to former presidential candidate and perhaps future presidential candidate Mitt Romney. Okay. Elsie's translating a story that's being related to her and by. Okay. She says the dog's nickname is initials LR. LR. Okay, so R for Romney. No, she says the R is not for Romney. And the L does not represent a typical first name. Okay, she says that LR actually is the initials for luggage rack. Okay. Okay. Elsie's translating, passing along a story that LR told her when they were both, they're both in the hereafter, both passed along to another place, another world, we'll say. She wants to remind humans, for goodness sakes, don't do what the Romney family did to LR. They went on vacation, and apparently, I don't know, there wasn't room inside the family car, or perhaps the dog was, one of the kids was allergic to dog hair, or perhaps maybe they just didn't like the smell of LR. Maybe he hadn't had one of his 3-time-a-day baths. So they decided to tie LR to the luggage rack on top of the family car. And we had questioned this story as to whether it was true or not, because it didn't seem to us like that would be something that someone that you'd find another way to do it. You'd get a bigger car. Or you'd have someone take care of the family pet while they're away on vacation. But anyway, she's saying that it is true that LR was tied to the luggage rack on top of the car, and Elsie's reminding us and to pass along. Don't do that. It's not a good thing to do. I mean, it's kind of tough. I mean, dogs like to stick their head out the window when they're in the car, but certainly not a good idea to have them actually completely outside the car. So at any rate, thanks for calling Elsie and LR, and thank you for voicing that concern and for us to pass along. Thanks. Bye. You know, Basil, we've had the little phone, the little inky dinky phone went off. Now we know that the Basil phone, the Nickelodeon phone, is the smaller of the two phones than the Cat in the Hat phone. And the Cat in the Hat phone, of course, conversely, is the larger phone that we reserve for our more important call-ins. But Tweety says she's got a caller in on hold from the little phone that wants to talk to us, and she says that he's passed along that this is very urgent, and it involves cats. So let's take that one. Hello, Basil BuddhaCat presents. Well, now I know why this call has been relegated to the Eensy Weensy phone. It's Basil is our friend. It's our someone we know named Ted Nugent, and we've had Ted on the show a number of times talking about many things, and we've given Ted a little bit of a rough time about his song, his big hit, Cat Scratch Fever, about how he relates in the song that the first time he had a sexual experience, he was 10 years old. And we've wondered out loud whether perhaps the girl who we had the experience with was also 10 years old. And it's been suggested by many callers in since then that the girlfriend actually was younger than 10. And Ted's a little miffed about that. Okay. He, you really want us to relate that? Okay, hold on. I want you to listen in so as I relate it, so that you can make any corrections if I misspeak. Okay, Ted says it actually wasn't a 10-year-old girl either. It wasn't a younger girl. It wasn't a 10-year-old girl. In fact, it wasn't a girl. It was a real cat. That's why he called it Cat Scratch Fever, not because we're laughing. And can you hear him? Ted is screaming. Says, what? Doesn't every red-blooded American kid and every red-blooded young man have his first sexual experience with an animal? I mean, well, I think you should have been left well enough alone with the 10-year-old girl and just argue the point that since you were 10 years old at the time, it's pretty gross and disgusting, but not nearly, I think, as gross and disgusting. Basil says he's been holding back, but it's actually, he knows who that cat was, because that cat actually was involved in another story we've discussed, and that was a cat that later on became Ringo's mom's cat. Remember WTF, or as he came to be known as WTF. Apparently, after the experience with Ted, he got away, somehow boarded a tramp steamer, and ended up in Liverpool, living in Ringo's mom's house. We've just got enough time left now to watch Sad Cat Diaries, and we wanted to get that in, so let's do that right now. And with that, we'll wish you a blessed Sunday morning. Bye.
They say they'd rob your grandma blind on Wall Street, fritter her away her Medicare on Wall Street. And Pharma Oil and their pet fox don't care if she lives in a box, so long as they wear platinum jocks on Wall Street, Meow. ink-a-dink, 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 ink-a-dink. Wow.